Ranger woke before the sun, the soft light filtering through the blinds falling across his sable fur. He stretched slowly, muscles still tight from yesterday's long walk and the tension of the night, then padded silently to the window, nose pressed to the glass. The world outside smelled of dew and pine, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth, leaves, and the distant hint of a river. Emily had not stirred yet, but the house was quiet. Even Caleb's soft snore from upstairs was subdued. Ranger's ears flicked at every subtle sound. The faint creak of the floorboards, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of something moving in the yard. It had been days since Willow's last feed, and he had remembered every detail. The broken fence, the scent of her frightened small body pressed against his, the warmth he had given her so she might survive. That memory weighed on him still, like an invisible tether. He shifted, pawing at the floor, considering whether he should wake Emily or explore the edges of the yard before breakfast. He opted for the latter, slipping past the back door with the careful, quiet precision of a soldier on a mission, every step deliberate, controlled. Outside, the morning mist clung to the grass, droplets heavy on his fur, and the familiar smell of damp moss and undergrowth filled his senses. He followed the trail toward the edge of the woods, the same direction he had pulled Emily the first time they had visited Willow. The path etched into his memory like a map written in instinct. The earth was soft, yielding under his paws. Leaves stuck to his fur, and every sound seemed amplified. The distant splash of water, a branch snapping under the weight of some unseen animal, the hum of insects waking to the day. He moved with purpose, nose to the ground, tracing scents invisible to the human eye, ears swiveling to catch the faintest rustle. He was searching, not blindly, but with intent. Emily, roused by the quiet, found him halfway down the trail, standing still, nose lifted, sniffing the air, eyes sharp and unwavering. "Ranger," she whispered, trying not to startle him. He turned just once, eyes meeting hers briefly before returning to the trail, tail low but steady. Not impatient, just aware. She followed, careful to keep her distance, letting him lead. The trail wound through thick ferns, old trees with trunks gnarled and scarred by decades, and patches of sunlight that broke through the canopy like fragile golden mirrors. Ranger paused at a familiar clearing, the memory of the twisted fence palpable in the air. He pressed his nose to a spot in the grass, flattened and worn, and exhaled sharply. Emily crouched nearby, trying to contain the lump rising in her throat. This was the place where he had made a choice, where he had stayed when most would have fled, where he had bled and shivered in the cold night to keep a fragile life alive. She reached forward, hand brushing against his back. He didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He only lowered his head slightly, eyes fixed on the ground, as if acknowledging the memory without needing comfort. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered. Ranger's tail gave a subtle flick, a small acknowledgement. They stood there for a long moment, the morning stillness pressing against them. A silence full of things neither needed words to express. After a while, Ranger turned back toward the woods, urging Emily to follow. They walked together, slower now, the forest opening up into a wider trail lined with pine and fir. The faint smell of wildflowers carried on the wind, mixed with the earthy scent of decaying leaves. Ranger paused at intervals, sniffing, listening, alert. Every now and then, he would glance back at Emily, as if to make sure she was still following, before turning again and moving with deliberate steps. They reached a small clearing where the sun streamed through the trees, and a stream bubbled over smooth stones. Ranger approached the water carefully, sniffing, then lowered his muzzle to lap gently. Emily watched him, noticing how tense his shoulders had begun to relax, the sharp edge of alertness softening. She realized he had been carrying the weight of that night, that memory, and now he was allowing himself a small reprieve. After drinking, he shook his coat, sending droplets into the sunlight, and glanced at Emily, eyes calm and steady. "Come on," she said softly, and they continued along the stream, moving deeper into the woods. The forest was alive with the morning chorus of birds, the rustle of small mammals in the underbrush, and the faint hum of insects. Ranger's movements were fluid, purposeful, his senses attuned to the rhythms of the wild. Emily followed, careful to stay close yet unobtrusive, witnessing his connection to this environment, a bond forged in instinct, survival, and an unspoken understanding of life and death. They walked for what felt like hours, the path winding and twisting, leading them to familiar markers, the fallen tree with a hollow beneath its roots, the rock outcropping etched with moss, the patch of wildflowers that bloomed each spring. Ranger stopped at each, sniffing, pausing, as if acknowledging old memories, confirming that the world remained as it should, that the fragile balance he had once protected still held. As they approached a bend in the trail, Ranger froze, ears forward, body tense. Emily followed his gaze and saw movement ahead. A small deer cautiously emerging from the trees. It was a young doe, thin but alert, her fur mottled with sunlight and shadow. Ranger's body shifted, low to the ground, muscles coiled but not in aggression. He observed quietly, calculating, assessing, honoring the life before him. Emily held her breath, knowing instinctively that this was a test of his restraint, of the lessons learned from Willow, of the deep imprint left by the night he had chosen to protect another. The deer stepped forward cautiously, then sensing no threat, began to graze. Ranger's body relaxed, a soft exhale escaping him, and he sat, tail sweeping the leaves. Emily knelt beside him, hand resting gently on his back. He leaned into her touch, not seeking comfort, but acknowledging connection, trust, and understanding. "You're doing well," she whispered. They remained there for some time, watching the deer move through the forest, sunlight dappling its coat. The woods were quiet except for the natural symphony of life, the rush of water, the song of birds, the whisper of leaves in the breeze. Ranger's attention shifted occasionally, sniffing the air, checking the underbrush, but always returning to Emily, the bond unspoken yet profound. After the sun climbed higher, they began the walk home. Ranger's steps were lighter now, the tension easing from his shoulders, but the memory of his choices lingered in his gaze. A quiet, unyielding respect for life, for connection, for the weight of responsibility he had once carried alone. As they neared the edge of the woods, Caleb appeared from behind the house, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with curiosity. Ranger paused, tail sweeping slowly, then approached with measured steps. Caleb knelt, offering his hand. Ranger sniffed once, then rested his head gently against the boy's shoulder. Emily watched, heart swelling. Here was a creature who had known grief, fear, and sacrifice, and yet he had chosen connection, trust, and companionship. That night, as Ranger settled near the fireplace, he no longer paced endlessly. He curled in a quiet, deliberate ball, ears relaxed, eyes half closed. Caleb sat beside him, sketching softly, while Emily prepared a modest dinner. The quiet house felt warmer, safer, imbued with the peace that comes after long struggle and survival. Ranger's chest rose and fell steadily. In the corner of the room, the memory of Willow lingered. A faint scent, a whisper of movement, a shadow of her presence. He was no longer waiting, no longer guarding alone. The past remained, but so did hope. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of earth, water, and new beginnings. Ranger's dreams, when they finally came, were gentle, filled with light, warmth, and the soft presence of someone he had once protected and saved. 9:24 p.m. Izhar. The morning after Ranger's first peaceful sleep, the sun spilled across the floor in golden streaks, and Ranger was already awake, ears twitching, nose to the window. He lingered there for a moment, sniffing the air, sensing the subtle changes in the wind, the quiet rustle of animals waking in the woods. Emily stirred in the kitchen, the smell of coffee and toast drifting into the living room. Caleb padded down the stairs, barefoot and yawning, and Ranger turned toward him, tail sweeping slowly along the rug. The boy's eyes lit up, and he reached down, brushing his hand along Ranger's neck. Ranger leaned into the touch, a soft exhale escaping him. But he didn't move toward the kitchen, didn't demand attention. He had learned patience, the slow, steady rhythm of life after the storm. Breakfast passed quietly, Caleb munching on toast, Ranger beside him, occasionally sniffing crumbs with careful deliberation. Emily watched both, marveling at how this small creature, once broken and trembling, now carried himself with quiet dignity. Afterward, she called the wildlife center, inquiring about Willow. The staff reported she had eaten a small portion of her feed and had taken tentative steps in the larger enclosure. Her legs were still weak, but there was progress, and that progress mattered more than anything. Ranger, as if understanding, sat quietly by the phone, ears angled toward the speaker, tail unmoving. When she hung up, he rose slowly, stretched, and nudged Emily's hand, a subtle request for movement. They decided on a short walk along the trail behind the house, careful not to overexert the young shepherd. Ranger led the way, nose close to.
The morning after Sterling's first bark, sunlight streamed across the backyard like it had a message, one only he could understand. I watched him from the kitchen window, a small figure among the shadows of the early spring trees. His paws dug into the damp earth, tentative at first, then more confident, the silver sheen of his fur catching the light with every step. He stopped, nose twitching, ears pricked. Something had caught his attention. A bird, a squirrel, the whisper of the wind. It was all new to him, and he approached with the same careful curiosity he had shown the first time I carried him outside. I opened the back door, letting the cool air mix with the warm sunlight. Sterling froze, then slowly trotted to me, tail low but wagging slightly. I crouched down, holding my hand out. He sniffed, hesitant, and then pressed his tiny head against my palm. The trust was still fragile, but it existed, glowing in the faint rise and fall of his chest. Breakfast was slow. Sterling nibbled, stopping often to glance toward the door as if expecting the world to snatch it away. Each bite was a small victory. Each swallow was a promise that he was here to stay. Afterward, he explored the house. Small steps, careful turns, ears twitching at every sound. A creak in the floor, a distant car horn, the humming refrigerator. Everything was a discovery. He paused at my desk, sniffing the chair I'd been sitting in the day before, pawing gently at the corner of a rug. I laughed softly. "Curiosity suits you, little guy." His eyes, pale blue and clouded with remnants of fear, met mine. I saw a spark there now, not just survival, but something closer to joy. Days passed like this. The ritual became ours. Morning outside, cautious breakfast, slow exploration, rest, and then attention. I read aloud sometimes, letting him hear my voice, soft and even, so he could anchor to something predictable. At night he curled in the corner, small but steady. Each twitch of his paw, each sigh, was a reminder he was still here. I started documenting his growth. Small details, the way his nose twitched at sunlight, how he learned to climb the porch steps, the first time he chased a butterfly and nearly toppled over. Each moment was a marker, a breadcrumb in the trail from fragility to strength. Sarah visited frequently. She brought food, soft encouragement, and her steady presence seemed to soothe him in ways I couldn't. Sterling recognized her immediately, ears perking, tail wagging. Sometimes he even followed her hand when she knelt near him, trusting the gentleness it carried. Weeks went by. He gained weight slowly but noticeably. The silver sheen of his fur thickened, no longer brittle and flat. His eyes became clearer, reflecting more light, more awareness. Every now and then, he'd bark softly, experimenting with the sound, testing the boundaries of his newfound strength. One afternoon, I decided to introduce him to a leash. He froze at the sight, small body trembling slightly. "It's okay, Sterling," I whispered, letting him sniff the straps. His paw brushed against the fabric, tentative. I clipped it loosely around his collar. Step by step, he followed me into the yard. The world was bigger than he'd known. The grass beneath his paws felt different, more alive. A gust of wind blew and he flinched, then shook it off, ears flattening for a moment before perking again. I praised him gently. "Good job, little guy." That's it. That evening, as sunlight dipped toward the horizon, he discovered the shadows of the trees. At first he approached cautiously, sniffing the ground, ears moving independently as if listening to every rustle. Then he dashed after a leaf caught in the breeze, claws scraping the earth, a high-pitched yelp of excitement escaping his throat. I laughed until my sides ached. "You're a wild one, huh?" He paused mid-leap, eyes gleaming, tongue hanging slightly out of his mouth. It was a sound of freedom, not the timid whimper of before, but a small exclamation. "I exist. I am alive. And the world is mine to explore." Nights were quieter, yet Sterling's restlessness was evident. He'd curl against my legs, paws kneading the carpet like he was still seeking warmth in unfamiliar textures. I let him be. He needed to relearn comfort. Slowly, predictably, I started leaving small toys around him. A squeaky ball, a soft stuffed rabbit. Items he could manipulate without fear. At first he ignored them. Then one morning he nudged a ball with his nose. Then again. Then he picked it up briefly, biting lightly, wobbling as he tried to balance. My laughter filled the room. "Yes, that's it, Sterling." His tail wagged uncontrollably, bouncing him into the wall slightly. He froze for a moment, as if startled by his own confidence, then went back to the ball. Each discovery was a triumph. Each gesture of play a reclaiming of life stolen from him. Weeks became months. Sterling grew stronger, more alert, more daring. The garden became his kingdom. The porch steps his mountain. The mailbox a sentinel to observe from afar. He chased leaves, birds, even the shadows themselves, always cautious, always learning. Sarah helped me build a small obstacle course in the backyard. Soft jumps, low tunnels, areas for him to test coordination and strength. At first he balked at each obstacle, but with encouragement, treats, and gentle guidance, he learned to navigate them. Each success brought a new bark, a high-pitched yelp, a dance of silver fur leaping in the sunlight. One day I introduced him to water, a shallow basin in the yard, barely a puddle. He hesitated, paw hovering at the edge, nose twitching. The first touch of water made him jump back, startled. Then curiosity won. He stepped forward slowly, paws splashing, ears flattened, tail wagging stiffly. I sat nearby, letting him explore. He discovered puddles, then shallow rills from the garden hose. Each splash brought squeals of delight, the sound like music. That night, after water play, he curled in his bed, soaked and exhausted. Yet his breathing was steady, even, a rhythm of life firmly reclaimed. Food became a ritual of growth. I measured his portions, adjusted his diet for strength, watching him gain muscle, watching the silver fur glint under indoor lights. He developed habits, pausing by the door before going out, nudging me when he wanted attention, curling at the corner of the couch during quiet reading hours. His trust deepened. Nights were no longer full of trembles and flinches, but gentle stretches of sleep, paw resting on my leg as a silent anchor of security. Sterling's barks grew stronger. At first, rough and intermittent, then clearer, resonant, a sign of confidence and health. Visitors were greeted with cautious enthusiasm. Each person assessed, sniffed, and earned a tail wag. Fear was not gone, but it was managed, understood, tempered by the assurance of safety and care. Sarah commented once, "He's different now. The boy who barely breathed in a box is running, exploring, and thriving." I nodded, watching him chase the sunbeams through the yard. It was a truth I hadn't expected to see. Life, pure and relentless, could bloom even from the coldest, darkest beginnings. Days turned into weeks, then months. Sterling grew into a strong, agile young dog. His silver fur thickened, his pale blue eyes brightened, and his paws, once trembling, became steady and sure. Each bark carried confidence. Each stride across the yard was a declaration of his reclaimed life. And yet, despite all progress, he remained aware of fragility. Sudden noises, new scents, unexpected movements. He reacted carefully, assessing, calculating, trusting slowly. That awareness was part of him now, a memory of the box, the cold, the fear. But it no longer defined him. One golden afternoon I sat on the porch, Sterling lying in the sunlight beside me. He lifted his head, ears twitching, eyes following a flock of birds overhead. Then he stood, tail high, back straight, and barked. A long, clear, vibrant sound that resonated across the garden. Not for warning, not for fear, but for life itself. I laughed, tears in my eyes, and whispered, "You did it, Sterling. You really did it." Sarah visited later that day. She watched him sprint across the yard, tongue lolling, ears flapping in the wind. "He's changed," she said softly. The little boy in the box would hardly recognize him now. I smiled, watching him stop mid-run, turn, and nudge my leg with a playful paw. The memory of that damp cardboard box, of fragile breaths and trembling paws, lingered. But it was tempered by the undeniable truth. Sterling was alive, strong, joyful, and free. And I knew as I watched him chase the wind that our bond, born from tragedy, nurtured by patience, would last a lifetime. Oten, 8:46 p.m. Izhar Ula. The following morning, Sterling woke early, sunlight filtering through the curtains and landing on his silver fur like liquid gold. He stretched each paw deliberately, shaking off sleep with a cautious shiver before padding softly toward the back door. I opened it for him, and he hesitated at the threshold, nose twitching as he surveyed the yard. The grass sparkled with dew, tiny droplets clinging to the tips, and the air smelled of earth, new beginnings, and life reclaimed. Sterling's first cautious steps became a trot, then a clumsy sprint as he chased a fallen leaf twirling across the lawn. I laughed, watching him, marveling at the sheer joy in his movement. Each leap, each paw hitting the wet earth, was a testament to his will to live. Breakfast was uneventful but peaceful. Sterling ate slowly, sniffing around the kitchen, watching every movement as if the room itself was a test of trust. He finished with a small burp and curled up on the rug, tail tucked, eyes half closed. I poured my coffee and sat beside him, fingers brushing over his soft, now thickened fur. He twitched slightly but didn't move away. Trust had be. Spring deepened into summer, and Sterling's world expanded with new sights, sounds, and adventures. One morning the sun crept over the horizon, painting the sky in molten gold and soft lavender. Sterling padded silently beside me as I opened the gate to the field behind the house. He paused at the edge, nose twitching, ears pricked, tail high. The field stretched wide, dotted with wildflowers, tall grass, and hidden paths. I crouched beside him. "Go on, little guy. Explore," I whispered. Step by step, Sterling ventured into the grass, sniffing the earth, investigating each hidden scent with delicate curiosity. He stopped at a butterfly that floated lazily on the breeze, tilting his head, eyes wide with wonder. He leapt gently, claws pressing into the soft earth, missing it by inches, then barked softly, thrilled by the movement. I laughed quietly. "You're going to be fast one day, Sterling." The field became his kingdom. Each day he discovered something new. A hidden burrow, a cluster of wildflowers, a trickle of water that ran from the trees. He chased shadows cast by tall oaks, startled birds, and even his own reflection in puddles. He ran with abandon, free of fear, yet careful, aware, alive. One afternoon, Sterling discovered a rabbit. He crouched low, tail twitching, eyes sharp, muscles coiled for movement. I called softly, "Careful, little guy. Watch." He pounced, missed, then spun, barked, and chased it until it disappeared into the underbrush. He returned to me panting, ears flopping, tail wagging fiercely. "Good job," I whispered. "You're learning every day." Summer heat came and Sterling adapted quickly. He learned to rest under the shade of trees, to drink from the cool creek, to pace himself during play. Each small lesson reinforced his confidence. He grew stronger, his silver fur shining under the sunlight, muscles coiling and relaxing with fluid precision. He could run faster, jump higher, and navigate obstacles that would have terrified him months before. One evening, a storm rolled in. Thunder rumbled, lightning split the sky. Sterling froze, ears low, tail tucked. I knelt beside him. "It's okay, little guy. I'm here." Slowly he leaned into me, trembling but trusting. We watched the storm together from the porch. Rain streaked across the windows, puddles formed, wind whipped the branches. Sterling's small body shook, but he remained beside me, eyes wide, listening, learning. When the storm passed, he ventured outside again, cautious at first, then bounding into the wet grass, paws splashing, fur glistening, eyes bright. The storm had not broken him. It had taught him resilience. Autumn arrived, painting the world in fiery hues. Sterling discovered fallen leaves, the crunch under his paws bringing joy and curiosity. He leapt into piles, barked, rolled, chased leaves swirling on the wind. Each sound, each movement, was a declaration of life reclaimed. One day, a neighbor brought over a litter of puppies for socialization. Sterling's reaction was measured curiosity. He approached slowly, sniffed, then wagged his tail cautiously. The puppies circled him, yipping, tumbling, and he mirrored their movements gently, guiding without aggression, teaching without words. By now, Sterling had developed a calm authority, a balance of energy and restraint. He learned from the younger dogs but also became their teacher, a mentor in playful exploration. Winter returned, colder and harsher than the previous year. Sterling's fur had thickened, but icy winds and frozen ground still tested him. Yet he adapted. Snow became a playground. He would leap, roll, bark, chase invisible prey, and explore each snowdrift with infectious joy. He discovered that cold could be thrilling, not frightening, that movement could bring warmth, that snowflakes were not threats, but treasures. One afternoon, Sterling followed a deer through the edge of the woods. I watched him cautiously, leash in hand, but he moved with precision and awareness, careful not to wander too far. The deer bounded away eventually, and Sterling returned, tail wagging, ears alert, chest puffed with pride. His instincts were alive but tempered by trust and guidance. By now, Sterling had grown into a confident, agile, and intelligent dog. He knew commands, understood gestures, and communicated subtly. Nudges, paw taps, barks, whines, playful growls. Every action was deliberate, every movement a blend of instinct, training, and trust. One spring morning, Sterling discovered a hidden path in the woods behind the house. He paused at the entrance, tail low, nose twitching. I crouched beside him. "Careful, little explorer, step by step." Slowly, he ventured in, sniffing every leaf, investigating every stone, moving with cautious curiosity. The path led to a clearing, a small stream, and a cluster of wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Sterling leapt into the clearing, barked, twirled, and rolled in the grass. Each motion was a celebration, a statement. He belonged to the world now, free and unafraid. Sterling's growth continued, not just physically, but emotionally. He began to anticipate routines, understand moods, sense unspoken emotions. When I was sad, he would nuzzle, rest his head on my lap, paw gently. When I was happy, he mirrored joy, leaping, barking, tail wagging, a reflection of shared emotion. He became a companion in the truest sense. Observer, participant, friend. One evening, Sarah returned, bringing treats and a small agility set. Sterling approached cautiously, sniffing each obstacle, ears flicking, tail low but curious. Slowly, he began to navigate tunnels, leap over low bars, weave through poles. Each success was met with barks, leaps, and tail wags. He was learning, thriving, celebrating movement, intelligence, and confidence. Time passed, and Sterling's life became a tapestry of exploration, play, trust, and companionship. He chased the wind, leapt over streams, barked at shadows, rolled in leaves and snow, curled up during quiet moments, and thrived in the rhythm of home. He had transformed completely. From a fragile, trembling pup abandoned in a cardboard box, Sterling had become strong, confident, joyful, a living testament to resilience, trust, and the power of love. One golden afternoon, Sterling stood on the porch, gazing at the horizon, tail high, ears alert. I approached, hand resting on his silver fur. He looked at me, eyes bright, full of life. "You did it, little guy," I whispered. "You really did it." Sterling barked, leapt, and ran across the yard, paws striking the earth, tail swinging, eyes bright with unrestrained joy. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Sterling was not just a survivor. He was a teacher, a reminder, a living proof that life, no matter how fragile, could bloom into courage, joy, and boundless possibility. 8:53 p.m. Izhar Ula. One crisp morning, Sterling noticed something strange near the edge of the yard. A small hole in the fence, partially hidden behind overgrown grass. His body tensed, ears pricked, tail low but alert. I knelt beside him. "Careful, little guy. We'll check it out together." Step by step, he approached, sniffing cautiously. He nudged the grass aside, discovering that the hole led to a narrow path beyond the property. His instincts told him curiosity could be risky, but his trust in me overpowered caution. I followed closely as he stepped through the gap, nose twitching at every new scent. The path led to a wider clearing surrounded by trees, sunlight spilling like liquid gold. Sterling barked softly, a sound full of triumph and excitement. He explored every corner, pawing at fallen branches, sniffing clusters of wildflowers, circling back to ensure I was following. That day, he learned that exploration was not fear, but the joy of discovery, tempered by awareness. Weeks later, Sterling encountered another animal, a stray cat near the creek. The cat arched its back, hissed softly, and Sterling froze, unsure whether to retreat or investigate. I knelt beside him, hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, little guy. Just watch." Sterling's eyes tracked the cat carefully, tail flicking. Slowly he inched closer, sniffing cautiously. The cat relaxed, tail twitching, and Sterling barked softly, tail wagging, signaling play, not threat. They circled each other, sniffed, and then the cat darted away. Sterling barked once, triumphant, and returned to me, eyes bright, chest puffed. Socialization had become a lesson in patience, trust, and observation. By now, Sterling had fully embraced agility training. Low hurdles, tunnels, weave poles. He navigated each with increasing confidence and speed. His playful growls and barks echoed through the yard, announcing victories and joy. Each success built more than skill. It reinforced his courage and zest for life. Summer returned, hotter than before. Sterling adapted seamlessly. He learned to seek shade, drink water regularly, and rest during the hottest hours. He ran through sprinklers, chased shadows, and leapt into small streams, reveling in the thrill of cooling water on his silver fur. Every moment was exploration, every breath a celebration. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the yard, Sterling discovered a fallen bird, injured and trembling. He approached carefully, nose twitching, ears alert. I crouched beside him. "Be gentle, little guy." Sterling sniffed the bird softly, pawed gently, then nudged it with his nose, checking for movement. He understood instinctively. Life was fragile, yet worth protecting. I guided him to the edge of the yard, and we gently placed the bird in a safe corner with water. Sterling watched it fly away days later, tail wagging, eyes bright with understanding. Compassion had joined his courage as a natural part of him. Autumn arrived again, painting the yard in gold, amber, and rust. Sterling leapt into piles of leaves, chasing, barking, spinning, rolling.